so that once you know what you're looking for, you'll see it in a lot of gardens. Like there's some on the university campus, which isn't a random thing that's got sown because we've been growing it. It's it's been planted there. So it's been used for horticultural purposes for a long time. And then in about the 90s, a Danish, actually it might have been before that, but anyway, a Danish guy was looking at the potential for energy crops. And the fact that this accumulates quite a lot of biomass quite quickly. So, for instance, we'd see something like this amount of growth in the field in just a few months. So it's literally growing. I mean, if in the glasshouse in the right conditions, it's growing centimetres, like in a week. So you could practically watch it grow. So the growing season in our environment, in the temperate environment, starts to grow about end of March, beginning of May, and then the growing season really finishes by about end of September, beginning of October, and it can reach in excess of 3 metres in that time. So it's very fast growing. It's a non-food crop, so we're using it as an energy crop that isn't competing with food.
How are you?
And the idea is as well that we would grow it on more marginal land, not land that you would normally use for outdoor crops. It is currently used for combustion purposes only. So from an energy perspective, it's only used for combustion. It's not used for the production of ethanol or anything like that. And one of the reasons is that the sugars within this, the carbohydrates, are kind of sort of tightly bound up in the cell wall structure. So they've got a lot of lignin, cellulose and hemicellulose, and all of those different components are very tightly sort of interlinked. So the release, getting to the sugars is very difficult. So you'd have to use something like a heat treatment or acid treatment or something like that to release the sugars. And one of the things I'm going to hopefully take you to see if we have time is a steam explosion. In order to access the sugars, if we wanted to produce ethanol, we really need to make the carbohydrates available. So one thing is that you can apply pressure and a bit of temperature and then release that very quickly, like a pressure cooker, and you're literally blowing the cells apart. And then the sugars become available to the enzymes that then you can subsequently use to produce your ethanol. So this institute has a long track record in breeding forage grasses and turf grasses. So our grasses are grown throughout the world, and I mean, I don't think this is boasting, I just think this is cool. The recommended list for farmers, I think practically all of the top 10 recommended lists of varieties that have been grown here, and that's just to emphasise the kind of the history that we have in breeding grasses. And a lot of the kind of pros of our grasses have been the high sugar content. So, and the sugars in grasses tend to be fructans, which are quite simple sugars and can be easily converted into ethanol. So where we've been breeding these high sugar grasses for feeding cattle and sheep, we can now look at using those to produce ethanol. Or we can use different enzymes to produce things like lactic acid. I meant to bring a plastic cup. In our canteen, we've got plastic cups which are actually produced from plants, not from petrochemicals. So obviously the whole point of this is to try and replace the things that we currently get from the petrochemical industry because of the impact of that on climate change. Also, we're helping the green economy, especially in Wales. We've got an amazing opportunity to develop a green economy in Wales. Also, there's if we can produce our own plastics, chemicals, etc. from plants, we can have a greater security in the supply of those things that we currently have, sourcing them from the oil producing countries. Let's go over.